We command respect, for you are in the presence of the king. Or the Monarch, as its name is. Yeah, TwoSun Tuesday, coming at you. This is TS223-CF. This is also known as the Monarch, as I was doing that stupid little shtick there at the beginning. And yep, more Jelly Jerry. Now this is a titanium subframe lock, an M390, and quite large. We got a little over 3.5. Well, let's see. Yeah, I basically have this measured at about 3.6 inches for the blade length. Surprisingly, the blade thickness is 4.1 millimeters. It's the thickest blade I've seen that TwoSun's made. All of that being said, it's very tall, a full flat grind, and this comes down to an oh so sexy thin slicey edge down there. So this thing is fantastic for cutting and doesn't really pose that much of a problem for binding unless you're cutting through something that could get fragile, like an apple. You might not want to try to force way down through there, or try to split a pineapple or something like that with it. But, you know, for most of your normal non-food kind of cutting tasks, this thing works fantastically well. It's pretty comfortable in the hand, but I do have to say, they probably could have rounded a lot of the edges on these things off a bit. This is kind of the problem of where I grip it, kind of back here and possibly a little bit there, where it just feels pointy or pokey, and that's just mainly because it could have been chamfered off a little bit to kind of reduce that. You know, not a huge complaint, but because of that, it's not quite an ergonomic masterpiece, but still quite nice. Action on this guy is quite nice. We don't have a crazy amount of extra lock bar access. We do have it kind of divoted out on both sides. I generally don't have any problems at all disengaging that, but I generally don't work with knives and gloves. That might be a little bit of a problem for you, but probably not all that much. The pocket clip on here is kind of interesting. It does come down to a fairly sharp point, but it does ramp to it. I generally haven't had much problem getting this in or out of the pocket. And you can see that this does offer quite a bit of material that it can be in. So, you know, this would be alright in slacks, but alright also in a lot of, you know, thicker work pants and stuff like that. Duck canvas fabric, which, hey, that's some of my favorite stuff because it's so dang durable. Works fantastic with that. Because the blade stock thickness is so thick on this, the blade isn't super up towards there, but if you do curl your finger in there, you can still touch it just because it's kind of wide and cavernous. So I suppose keep that in mind. Fairly reserved flipper tab. It's got a little bit of a point there. Very, very effective for that, but that's the only deployment method really that you have. A lot of times I do like to do a lighter flick on some of those, just because it's fun and different. How about if I do some size comparisons then? There we go. There's the PM2. We got the Benchmade 940. Obviously, that's going to be smaller. But interestingly, as far as length and everything, fairly similar to the PM2. It doesn't have that finger choil there, so you do have a little bit longer blade length. All right, there's the rat number 1 and the Spyderco Endura there. So, I did mention that this guy has a stupid thick blade stock on him of 4.1 millimeters. About a 3.6 inch usable blade length on there from basically this point on the handle out to the tip. We got 4.7 ounces or 133 grams on this guy. So, not a featherweight, but for the amount of cutting performance and power you get out of this thing, it's a nice package. And 0.58 of an inch wide, which is a little bit more than the Spyderco PM2, as you can see there. And most of that ends up coming down to just the thicker blade stock going on there. Yeah, it did really impress me. I was quite worried when I did measure 4.1 millimeters for the blade stock thickness on this guy. But man, it just comes down to almost nothing. It's not quite a Scandi grind like, you know, paper thin behind the edge there, but super, super slicey. One of the more slicey TwoSuns out there, and that's kind of saying something because they really have stepped up their game on their grinds, especially in the mid to higher 200 and 300s as far as their model numbers are concerned. So, in general, I really do like this thing. I do kind of wish that we had a little bit more chamfering kind of going on there. It's probably a bad idea, but I might try to do that myself on my belt grinder or something like that. Obviously, I'm going to be having to wear a filtration mask because, well, carbon fiber shards don't exactly feel good in the inside of your lungs. But, yeah, that just, if that does become something that ends up bothering me overall. But, hey, that's a very nice, very belly-some, almost leaf shape kind of blade to it. I mean, it's a drop point, and the point is basically right there around where that pivot is, or maybe just a tiny bit higher, whereas the leaf shape would have it a bit lower there. So yeah, this is a drop point, but shaped like me. All right, well, that was fun. How about if we go ahead and see the inside of yonder knife? We got the pocket clip there, asymmetrical hole that it's in there, but one screw there. There's the other side of the Chicago screw that just came out. And then there's the other screw and the pivot. And then we can pull this guy off. And yep, we got the steel bearing races on the inside there, which is nice to see. No skeletonization going on the inside, but that's because they've done a lot of milling to remove material on the outside for the carbon fiber overlays there. They are secured with a screw here at the front side on the liners, and then obviously they're attached at both points of the Chicago screws that are part of the back spacer there. Now we do have just an itty bitty little pocket out there, probably just to equalize some weight on there. That's kind of interesting that they ended up doing that. But yeah, fairly simple on the inside. It works quite well. I have some cardboard dust, it seems, that's kind of built up on there. I'd been using this quite extensively getting ready for the review because I haven't had this one quite as long as the others to get that much experience, so I just kind of shoved it into a little bit shorter time frame. So yeah, did a lot of cutting with this recently. Really happy with how slicey this thing is overall. It's a joy to cut with, and it's strange because of the very thick blade stock thickness on there. But hey, when you got a super tall blade like that, you can get away with something like that. See, there's the shorter one that's got a flat top. I'll go to that one here. And then pocket clip, go in there. I'm holding the Chicago screw on the other side because, yeah, it's quite loose if you don't do that. Tell you actually, screw it all together. This one does have a little bit of that zippy sound to it, just due to it having kind of a deep satiny finish on there. Doesn't really bother me all that much, and well, if I actually do have the pivot tuned exactly where I want it, then yeah, it'll still drop shut when I do a little tiny wiggle to it. We had a pretty average detent sort of thing going on there. Not the absolute earliest thing in the world, but it does have a detent ramp to kind of make up for that. I have seen some newer TwoSuns that aren't incorporating a detent ramp on there, and some people are a little confused by that. And for the most part, what I've run into is those that don't have those little detent ramp sort of things, have a very, very early detent, like somewhere right around there. So by the time you actually move it just a little bit over, you're way past the detent. So they don't really feel the need to do that. So I can understand that. But I guess ultimately it really comes down to the designer and if they actually want that on their particular knife or not. So there you go. I really do like this thing quite a bit. Like I said, it does feel a little pokey in some areas on the back there. But, obviously that doesn't affect you at all if you like to use your hammer grip there. Just comes in a little bit more if you're doing your saber grip there because, yeah, a lot of that in the back palm ends up getting those little pokey areas there. Overall, though, this thing is an absolute joy to cut with. And yeah, I'm really just not super used to having a super thick blade stock that ends up being ground quite nicely like that. It usually seems like something that you would take to somebody to do an aftermarket regrind on something to be able to end up like that. But this came out of the factory that way. So, yeah, thumbs up for me on that. All right, so this is 223 Monarch from Jelly Jerry. And, yeah, that's basically everything I got to say about it. So, I will leave it at that. As always, I appreciate y'all for watching, and have yourself a wonderful rest of your day, yo. Like, comment, subscribe.